Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today is part 4 of our 2024 KaffeBox Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Ranking Series. This series is broken down into 5 parts, with today's video featuring coffees 19 through 24, and the other videos featuring coffees 1 through 6, 7 through 12, and 13 through 18, with the winner of each of these videos, as well as 2 wildcards, making it to our 5th and final video to determine our favorite coffee from the 2024 KaffeBox Advent Calendar. So let's go ahead and introduce the coffees that will be featured in today's video, beginning with day 19, which is the Nansebo, a wash-processed Ethiopia from Fuglen, based out of Oslo, Norway. Day 20 is the Kopakaki, a wash-processed Rwanda from Kafferäven, based out of Gothenburg, Sweden. Day 21 is the Divisa, a carbonic natural processed Colombia from Gringo Nordic, also based out of Gothenburg, Sweden. Day 22 is the Oreti Estate, a natural processed Kenya from Gringo Nordic, once again based out of Gothenburg, Sweden. Day 23 is the Santuario Sul, a honey processed Brazil from Kaffa, based out of Oslo, Norway. And then day 24 is the Arbol, a carbonic macerated natural processed Nicaragua from Standout Coffee, based out of Stockholm, Sweden. Right, let's go ahead and move these out of the way for the time being. And as always, none of these cups are labeled anywhere except on the bottom. We just like to shuffle them around for good measure, as it gives us an opportunity to discuss what we have on our hands here today. And our last blind taste test video featured a number of cleaner coffees, as none of them were particularly fermenting. This is going to be the opposite of that, as I fully expect at least 4 of these coffees to have some level of fermentiness to them, given that we do have a couple of really processed coffees, that of course being the carbonic macerated natural processed Nicaraguan coffee and the carbonic natural processed Colombian coffee. In addition to that, we have a natural processed Kenyan coffee, and then maybe fermentiest of all is going to be that honey processed Brazilian coffee, which is interestingly an SL28, but it was described by Kaffa as being one of the more fermenty and funky coffees, and when we were brewing it, it definitely did lend itself towards the most fermenty and funky aroma of any of these coffees, so that'll certainly be interesting to see how that turns out. But for that reason, I feel like it's going to be extremely difficult for me to get the more processed coffees correct, as it's going to be a little bit of a shot in the dark with those. Outside of that, I feel like it should be a little bit easier with the 2 wash processed coffees that we do have on the table, but that's basically going to be it for coffees that might be a little bit more difficult to tell, and then 2 that should be a little easier. But let's go ahead and start with this one right here. I'm definitely going to be taking in the aroma of all of these coffees in the hopes that I'm not picking up one of the ones that might take the ability to taste away too much. So this one right here, cup number 1. Okay, luck would have it, I think I picked up one of the less processed coffees. This one's quite nice. And I could see it being a number of coffees right here. Got some really nice sweetness to it, some really nice clarity actually, so I'm going to place it right here for right now. This one has some really nice potential to it, so first place, let's go ahead and move on to cup number 2. Okay, I think we got lucky again. Yeah, we did. Okay, this one here, not quite as impressive as this coffee, but I'm going to place it in second place for right now. I can't quite tell what this coffee is. I have an early guess too. I feel like these are going to be 2 of the, well, obviously they're less processed coffees, but I can't quite tell based off that first impression. Let's go ahead and move on to cup number 3. And this one's one of our fermenty coffees. Let's move on to cup number 4. This one, I feel like it is, but it's a little bit more faint. So move on to this one then. This one I don't think is. Yeah, this one actually is one of our more processed coffees. So I'm gonna place it right here for right now. It's actually a little cleaner. The aroma wasn't quite as strong, so I wasn't able to tell that it wasn't. And that means that we'll move on to this final one. Yeah, this one shouldn't be a more processed coffee. And it's not. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move this right here for right now. And we're going to run through these three one more time, and I'm going to try to decipher which is which. One of these has to be a slightly more processed coffee, and my guess, based off instinct, is that it's the natural processed Kenyan coffee, because I have had slightly cleaner natural processed Kenyan coffees in the past. I have not had cleaner carbonic or carbonic natural processed coffees in the past, so I don't think that it's going to be one of those, and I already know that that honey processed Brazil is going to be very funky. So let me try to guess between these three which one is which. Okay, I'm gonna guess this one right here is that Kenyan coffee that I mentioned, which would make it number 22, I wanna say, 22. It does have a nice level of brightness to it. It's also got the most intensity out of these coffees. And in addition to that, it's got a really prominent stone fruit aspect to it. So it could be the washed Ethiopia. I'd be very surprised if it was. This one right here, I feel like was the Rwandan coffee. Yeah, unless the Ethiopia is just extremely tea-like, I imagine that that has to be our Rwandan coffee, which would make it number 20. Which would make this our Ethiopian coffee, which would make it number 19. All right, now save the best for last. Let's see how I want to place these ones. Okay. It's relatively clean for a more processed coffee. This one is extremely heavy, and it's definitely got a lot of that wininess to it, that slight olive-like taste to it. I imagine that one's probably going to be my least favorite. This one's right there with it. I'm not sure which of these two I like less. So both of them have a lot of similar characteristics to them. They're both very red fruit, they're both very winey, and they both have just a lot of fermentiness to them. It's basically a game of which of these two do I feel like is the honey processed Brazilian coffee. I'm not sure. They're both presenting a little bit of a less desirable quality for me in two different ways. One of which is just a little bit more intense in terms of the wininess and the acidity to it. And then the other one is a little bit more prominent in that slight olive-like tone to it. So they're very similar to me. I'm gonna place them right there for right now, and I'm going to try to take some guesses as to which is which. I'm gonna try one more time. I think that since this one feels the most heavy, I'm gonna guess that it's the coffee from Kaffa. I mentioned that going into it, it's the one that I thought was going to be the most fermenty, which would be a little unfortunate because the concept of an SL28 honey processed Brazilian coffee is so intriguing, but the fact that it did brew so heavy does lend me to believing that it is going to be that coffee. Then these two, I'm gonna guess that this one is the carbonic macerated processed Nicaraguan coffee. Now, one is the Colombian and then one's the Nicaraguan. I feel like the Colombian is going to be the heavier of the two. And then Nicaraguan coffee. All right. I don't really care if I got these three wrong. I'm just hoping that I got these three right. So let's see how we did. And for all I know, one of these could be the natural Kenyan coffee. This one I said was the honey processed Brazil from Kaffa, so it should say number 23. And it is. It is the most heavy of these coffees, and I fully expected it to be the most heavy of these coffees, so I'm not really surprised when I saw the wine note on there as well. I was a little disheartened, didn't want it to turn out that way, but it certainly was very, very intense. So this one right here I said was our Colombian coffee, so it should say number 21. And it is. All right, perfect. And people know my feelings towards more processed Colombian coffees in general. They do tend to have a lot of that heavier red fruit to them. So not really surprised that that's the way that that one turned out. Now I'm very confident on this one. This one should be number 24, the Standout Nicaraguan. And it is. Nicaraguan. All right. I don't have too much to say on it. This one was entirely process of elimination. It's a little nicer. It's a little cleaner. Honestly, these two are both scoring level 1 in terms of cleanliness on the tasting wheel. This one's at least scoring a level 2, and I feel like if you adjusted it, you could get a level 3, so not bad. I think this one's a geisha. I think this one's actually also a geisha, so very interesting in that sense. Let's go ahead and move on. This is actually what I care about, and this one right here I said was our Ethiopian coffee, so it should say 19, and it is. Right now I'm 100% confident that I got the rest. So this one was our wash processed Ethiopian coffee, and truth be told, it was a little bit more difficult to tell. Mostly because this coffee is a little plain overall. I'm not getting too much from it, and I think it's because everything else on this table is just so much more intense that this one in comparison is going to feel notably less intense, but even then there isn't necessarily a characteristic that's standing out too much. Right, so this one right here should be our Rwandan coffee. Before I go, I want to make sure that it's a Rwandan coffee. That has to be our Rwandan coffee, so it should say number 20. And it is. It's got that classic savoriness to it. It's got a slightly minty quality to it as well, which is kind of interesting, but that means that our winner, and I'm very happy about this, is the natural processed Kenyan coffee from Gringo Nordic, number 22. And the main reason I'm happy about that is it means that our final is not going to be just a bunch of washed coffees, as this one's very, very nice. I do have to say, I'm going to run through this real quick. It's very, very clean. It threw me off the first time I tried it because it doesn't have a strong aroma. I'm wondering if it is actually a washed coffee because it's acting very clean for what it is. I'm going to look this up at the end of this video and just make sure that it is a natural processed coffee because it is a little too clean to be a natural processed coffee for me, but that's kind of interesting. So yeah, that's the results, and that means that we do have our final set. So we have the Aga from Coffee Collective. We have the wash processed El Salvador from, I want to say, is it Yosin Cafe? Then the third video, who won the last one? Can't quite recall, truth be told. But then, yes, we have this natural processed Kenyan coffee in the final. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and pick 2 wild cards, and then we will pick it up from there. But I'm going to leave this one at that. So this right here has been part 4 of our 5-part KaffeBox Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Ranking Series. Thank you for watching.